foundational stuff. We talk about the natural law and the revealed law. Okay, the natural law and the revealed law. Natural law can be known through reason. Revealed law certainly is reason and faith also, but more faith in the sense that I have to believe the revealed law of Scripture. I have to believe this is true, and it takes faith to do that. All right? So it takes the gift of faith. But natural law is something we can know through reason. So that's why yesterday when I talked about the cardinal virtues, I say I always start with the cardinal virtues with my class because you can know those through reason alone. Okay? Adding God to the mix certainly kicks them off, but you can know them through reason alone. And as if you remember some of Monica's statistics yesterday, we have people that maybe no longer go to church. We have people that are atheists, agnostic, whatever, coming. So we have to be aware of that. But that's not to say they can't know goodness, okay, through reason. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So these are kind of the first three sessions that are in your book. God's plan for marriage in the beginning. Christ restores God's plan for marriage. What he's saying, I do too. So those are the ones I'm going to give you some background information on and some highlights that when you start to work with them, you can kind of hopefully recall some of this. So first of all, I want to come back to this idea of faith and reason, intellect and will. Okay, how are we different from all of God's creation? We know and choose. Yes?
Is this in our book at all? Or
no, this part is not. Okay, this part is not. Because this is more kind of foundational stuff that will get you where the book is. So we're different. I always tell my students we're different than any other God's creation because we have intellect and free will, so we can understand and we can choose. And I usually, granted, I think in our society today, a lot of times we treat animals like people, so we tend to sometimes confuse. We sometimes think animals have, intellect and will. And so I always use the example in my course. I always say, what makes us different? I said, think about it. I was raised in a farm. I said, when cats go into heat, they don't look around and say, gee, look at that cat will stick around and help me raise the kitties. Okay? They just have sex. Okay? It's an instinctual drive that they have. Unfortunately, I had a young man in the back of my class one day say, I think I'm an animal. No. God gave you intellect and will. You can choose whether to engage in this or not. But that's the thing. Okay, that's what we're talking about, is this is what makes us different. So when we talk about reason helps us understand this natural law that is embedded in the world around us. Now, granted, this morning in Northwest Ohio when we woke up and saw snow, we all went, But I'm sure none of you said, oh my gosh, snow in January? I mean, we expect this, right? I mean, this is embedded in the natural order of things. So the idea is that we can use our intellect to understand those things that are around us. So we can know good through understanding natural law. All right? Now, not at the same level, obviously, that we know good and we know God. But we can understand the concept of good through natural law. Because if nature, if the law kind of embedded around us works as it should, it's moving us into a purpose and a good direction. When things get kind of turned around, then we get into trouble. So then think about it. This is a good way to think of it. Yesterday I was talking about temperance, right? The whole idea. Well, this is always a good thing to talk about in college kids because, they go out on benders on the weekends. They just drink till they can't drink anymore. They think that's like really cool. So, but I always tell them, I said, okay, think about this. You don't have to believe in God to know it's not a good thing to go out and get drunk. I mean, even if you never get stopped by the cops or run into anybody, the next morning when you're throwing up in the toilet, and you're feeling awful, most of the day you're saying to yourself, no, I never want to do this again, until the next party. But I mean, your body's telling you you're not supposed to do this. Your body's not made to do those kinds of things. It's not good for your body. Now, I don't have to believe God to know that. It's just a natural part of who I am. So when we talk about those virtues that I talked about yesterday, it's not like, it's not like somebody who's an agnostic or an atheist can't figure out good using prudence and, temperance and justice, okay? They can figure that stuff out. But the difference is, when you add faith to the mix, it helps us recognize the giver of the law, okay? Who put this all into motion, all right? Who embedded the law around us that we can know through reason? Who gave us the revealed law? So that's where faith comes in. Now, I always tell my students, and I use a clip from Richard Dawkins, who's a famous atheist, but, Richard Dawkins believes in things, but just not in God, all right? But he believes in stuff. He believes there's a possibility we came to be on this earth because aliens seeded us here, okay? Now I'm thinking, well, okay, you want to believe that, but you think everybody who believes in God is goofy. Okay, let's go with that. But I mean, it's that sense, I think, that again, what do we have faith in? We want to have faith in the truth. The truth. And that's why when we start to look at these ideas that we're talking about, theology of the body, how God creates, it becomes important that we help them understand that there is an objective good. There is a goodness. Now, you may argue over whether that's just totally intellect or faith, but if we can get some people that far, we've done a nice job. So when we talk about philosophically, and John Paul II, when he developed, he didn't create a new doctrine. I remember when I started reading Theology of the Body, I thought, I mean, it was all stuff I learned before. He just talks about it differently and pulls it together differently, and gives it that philosophical bent that's always been a part of our church, but that we lost for a while. Okay, so just to give you that concept. So philosophically, you got to kind of understand, Aristotle says we can know good if we know the purpose and meaning of something. All right, now remember, Aristotle he was long before Christ. So, but he says, and I think about this, what's the purpose of your eyes? To see, right? So what do we normally say when we can't start seeing anymore? We say, my eyes are going bad. Why? Because they're not fulfilling their purpose and meaning anymore, what they were created for. So when Aristotle talks about this goodness, he says we can know good if we understand purpose and meaning, the purpose and meaning of something. So what St. Thomas Aquinas does is he continues with that idea. Okay? He says that everything God creates has purpose and meaning. Everything. You as an individual, every human being has purpose and meaning. The parts of you have purpose and meaning. Your ears have a certain meaning, your eyes, your mouth. Okay? Everything has purpose and meaning. God creates with purpose and meaning. All right? So the way we use reason then is to come to understand that purpose and meaning. And once we can understand that purpose and meaning, then we can choose to direct our lives to fulfill that purpose and meaning. Okay? So, Aquinas says a part of nature, everything, our human nature has parts to it, or it has a purpose and meaning. And when we fulfill that nature, then we're fulfilling our purpose and meaning. That's why it really bothers me when people say things like, well, and Pope Benedict did a great job on this. I used it in one of my shows, but he said, when people say, when they talk about sin or things like that, and they say, well, it's only human. He says, that's so wrong. It's not human. We're created in the image of God. That is anti who we're supposed to be. And I really like that, because I hear people say that a lot. Well, they're only human. What, human beings are, we're supposed to be, bad people? No, we're supposed to be good people, So when we fulfill our nature, it means we're created to be good. So natural law then is using this intellect and will we have to our greatest ability. Okay, using our intellect to understand so that we can freely choose. All right, so that is part of fulfilling the natural law. So, Aquinas says the first precept of natural law is good is to be done and pursued and evil is to be avoided. Makes sense, right? Pursue good, don't do evil. But that's going to bring us right back to what question? What do you think? What? What's good? Okay. What's good? Okay. So, when we talk about that then, what is good? Okay, Aquinas is saying pursue good, but what is good? This is going to be difficult to answer if we don't believe in God. Okay, it falls into a relativistic stance. Everybody gets to decide what they think is good.
The guy that says he's an animal says it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the idea here is, unless there is an objective lawgiver, God, then it's going to be really difficult for us to know good. Now, in some ways we can, but when you start to kind of talk even about, what is better than another, does one good overcome another? How do we know that? Well, we have to go back to the will of God. So good is always doing the will of God. That's the ultimate good. That's the ultimate good. And sometimes that flies in the face of reason. And think about it. Firefighters who run into a house to save somebody, it makes sense to us, but if you think about it purely from the stance of a person running into a building, you go, what? Why would you do that? Well, because we say it is good to be selfless. But if you don't see that as good, then you certainly are not going to put that forward. You're going to say, well, that's crazy. So notice the culture has different ideas. Yeah.
So how do you handle when somebody doesn't believe in God? You say doing good is the will of God. You say, well,
yeah,
not doing good for God, so then what's good?
Yeah, that's, again, where we have to always come back to, and we're going to see that today when we start to talk about these topics. We're going to talk about God, but we're also going to be talking about it just from a stance of reason. So come back to always purpose and meaning. So like when you talk about sex, that's a big one. What's the purpose and meaning of sex? Okay? And I'll kind of talk about how do we look at those, not how do I argue it, but how do I state what the problem is in a way that is clear for them to understand? That's a great question. So again, then it kind of takes us full circle. Well, how do I know the will of God? Through natural law and revealed law. Okay, so it's this idea, how do I know what God wants me to do? It appeals to reason because that's how we're created. That's what God intended. So why do certain things appeal to reason? Why do we want to marry? Right? Why do you want to marry? Because we're created to be in community. We're social beings. God creates us that way. But now that doesn't mean we're all going to be called to marriage, but we're all called to some kind of human relationship. Right? You see that right away in Genesis. So the idea is there are these that God puts in us, these longings that God puts in us that moves us toward Him. Now, a lot of people don't recognize that. But when you start to talk about how do I flourish as a human person, and we kind of talked a little bit about this yesterday, that idea of, well, maybe if I get a bigger house, I'll be happy, or maybe if my kids get into the right college, I'll be happy, But then we start to understand, as those things happen, that's not what makes us happy. It lasts for a little bit, we feel good for them, and then life goes on. So when we talk about what it means to be human, we're really saying that we have to be about what it means to really be a humanly fulfilled person, if that makes sense. To flourish as a human being. So, society's going to tell us one way to flourish, okay? God tells us another. This semester I'm teaching theology of suffering, healing, and dying. Talk about that and talk about happiness. But that's our faith. How do you flourish even when you're suffering? How can you be blessed? How can you be happy? Because in